Now we can declare functions, but functions aren't much good unless we can call them, and so we come to function invocation. Let's take a look at some example functions. Okay, so here we have the same function declared twice. The first time is the anonymous function assigned to a variable style, and the second one is just the standard function declaration. Now, in the case of the second example here, the function is invoked by using the function name followed by parentheses. So if we were to execute square, pass 7 as a parameter, then we would get a result of 49. The other function declaration, squarefunc, is executed by calling the function, the variable name followed by parentheses. Very similar. So if we called squarefunc and passed 7, then again we would get the result 49. This is probably familiar. It's the same way that lambdas are invoked in C#. Take a look at an example. I have here a function called add that accepts two parameters, num and num2, and returns their sum. If we call add 6 and 7, we get the result 13 as expected. What would happen if we passed an extra parameter? So here I'm passing 6, 7 and 1, 3 parameters, to a function that only accepts 2 parameters. Let's try that and see what happens. We get the same result. What happens in this situation in JavaScript is that the last parameter, which is not expected, is just ignored. There's no error. I have another function here, this time accepting 3 parameters. So now what happens when we define the same function twice? Firstly with 3 parameters, and then again with 2 parameters. Now in C# we would expect that what would happen is that my first call, add 6, 7, would call the function that accepts 2 parameters, and the second call, add 6, 7, 1, would call the function that accepts 3 parameters. But that's not what happens. JavaScript doesn't allow function overloading. So what's happening here, because I'm declaring 2 functions called add in the same scope, the second function just overwrites the first one. That brings us to function overloading. As we've already seen, JavaScript functions cannot be overloaded. JavaScript does provide parameter flexibility by matching parameters on a best effort basis. If too many parameters are provided, or too few parameters are provided, it will not cause an error. Extra parameters are ignored. Parameters that are not provided are initialized to undefined. When calling a function, object parameters are passed by reference, and primitive type parameters are passed by values. Take a look at an example. Okay, so I have here an add function that we've seen before, 2 parameters, num and num2, and I'm calling it with 3 parameters. I'll just quickly run that. See, the result is 3. So what's happened, it's added the first 2 parameters together and ignored the third one. If I now call the add method and pass just a single parameter, the result is the special JavaScript value, not a number. Let's take a look at the type of the second parameter when it's not supplied. And you can see here that, as I mentioned, parameters that aren't provided in a function invocation are initialized to undefined. Now, to demonstrate that primitive types are passed by value, I have a string here called name with the value Tom, and a function to reverse the characters in that string. If we reverse name and view the output, we can see that the output is Tom backwards. If we now have a look at the current value in the name variable, because name is a primitive type, it's passed by value, we would expect that the function received a copy of the variable name and the original variable should have its original value, Tom. And so it does. On the other hand, if we are passing an object into a function, it's passed by reference. So in this function reverse person name, we're modifying the object that's passed into the function. So then we will expect that if we later check the original object, we'll see that it's been updated with the changes made by the function. First thing though is to reverse the name of the Tom object and check the output. As expected, you can see it's Tom backwards. And now if we look at the name property on the original Tom object, it's been updated as well, because objects are passed by reference.